Hello everyone, welcome to my discography ranking of Slipknot, my favorite band of all time. For this ranking, I'll be ranking every single Slipknot release, from Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat, to their newest album, The End So Far. So let's begin. Number 8, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. MFKR is certainly an early Slipknot album. The best way I can describe MFKR is the Slipknot Jazz album. This is the only album with Anders on vocals, and you can still see Slipknot trying to find their sound. Record labels definitely hated the Slipknot Jazz sound, but, you know, I think everything worked out in the end. But at the time, they were refused to be signed by, major labels because of that jazz sound they were trying to go for, like jazz metal, essentially, which is why they changed their sound to be more aggressive. But I'm not gonna lie, the Slipknot Jazz album was pretty good if you ask me. It's very far from being my favorite album by Slipknot, but my favorite tracks off the album are the title track, Gently, which I actually prefer this version over the Iowa one, Do Nothing, Female Dog Slap, Only One, and Confessions, with Confessions being my favorite track off the album. Corey Taylor has recently shared that he wants to make some jazz material, so who knows, we may hear Corey cover songs of early Slipknot material. Wouldn't that be cool? Number 7, the Selftitled. Slipknot's Selftitled album is considered a metal classic for people who discovered Slipknot in the 90s. I discovered Slipknot in 2019. I understand why people consider this their favorite album, but if you compare the track list with the other Slipknot albums, it just doesn't compare to their later stuff in my opinion. This is still an amazing listen though, and I highly recommend it if you like 90s nu metal and rap metal. My favorite songs off the album are Sick, Eyeless, Wait and Bleed, Surfacing, Spit It Out, Purity, although it was removed in later releases, Liberate, Prosthetics, No Life, Deluded, Only One, Eeyore, and Me Inside, which my favorite song off the album is Spit It Out. Number 6, All Hope Is Gone. I will never understand why so many people dislike this album. Maybe it's because it's not as heavy as the other albums. Maybe it's because it's kind of groove metal-y. That's not even a word, I don't know why I said that. I don't think this new sound detracted from the album, although I will admit there are a few tracks in the latter half that kinda sound a little bit similar. Still, this is one of my favorite Slipknot albums. My favorite tracks off the album are Gematria, The Killing Name, Sulfur, Psychosocial, Dead Memories, Vendetta, Ginna, Wherein Lies Continue, Snuff, All Hope Is Gone, Child of Burning Time, Vermilion Part 2 Bloodstone Mix, Until We Die, with Ginna being my favorite track off the album. I mean, how could you not like that song? I love that song. Number 5, Point 5 The Gray Chapter. Dedicated to the late bassist Paul Gray, Point 5 The Gray Chapter is inevitably a raw, heavy Slipknot album with moments of melodic. Some fans don't like that, but I know I personally never had a problem with it, and I'm sure a few maggots out there are questioning that mindset, but I like melodic Slipknot. Just because it's melodic doesn't mean it's less heavier. Plus, you could always tell that it's Slipknot. Don't say you can't, don't call it Stone Sour, it's still Slipknot. I know how some of you people are. It's Slipknot, not Stone Sour, and it's not Corey Taylor's solo material. It is Slipknot. Point 5 The Gray Chapter was actually the first Slipknot album I listened to in full, and while I can't say I prefer 4 other albums over it, this is the album that got me into Slipknot and made me want to listen to the rest of the discography. My favorite tracks off the album are every single track. I know that probably just makes me sound lazy, but I'm not lying. I love every single track of this album, with my favorite one being the negative one. Number 4, The End So Far. I was actually so shocked when I found out a lot of Slipknot fans don't like this album. I agree that it's more progressive, slower, more psychedelic. It isn't as aggressive as their other albums, but I've never had a problem with that. I like slower melodic Slipknot, because yes, while it is slow and melodic, you can still tell that it's Slipknot, not Stone Sour or Corey Taylor's solo band. I love all the tracks off this album, with Finale being my favorite one off the album. I enjoy the more prog and psychedelic elements being used on this album, but I can totally understand if you're not a fan of them and want something more like Iowa. Personally, as much as I love this album, I just could not see myself putting it over these next 3 albums because these are my absolute favorite Slipknot albums. Number 3, Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. You know, whenever I first listened to this album, I never liked how Corey's vocals sounded more high-pitched on the album, but after a few years, I've warmed up to it, and I absolutely love it now. At the time, Corey was non-stop drinking alcohol and smoking, which caused his scream to sound more higher-pitched than it did in the Iowa era. Nowadays, Corey's vocals sound better than ever in 2022, in my opinion, and this album is filled with awesome songs from top to bottom. My favorites off the album are literally all the songs. I know I probably sound very I know I probably sound very lazy doing that every single time, but I love all the I love all the songs up here. Corey may have had a higher pitched voice during this era, but even so, there's no denying that Corey never lost his ability to sing, and his vocal range is phenomenal. Just listen to Corey's solo material or the songs he's done with Stone Sour. My man's has a higher octave range than Michael Jackson. How does that even happen? I don't know. But my favorite track on the album is Before I Forget. Number 2. Iowa. Iowa is the definition of an album you play when you feel like punching a hole in the wall. Iowa is easily one of my favorite albums just because of how heavy and raw it is, and it's definitely the heaviest album they've ever made. But my favorite tracks off the album are People Equal, well, you know the rest. Disaster Piece, My Plague, both versions, Everything Ends, The Heretic Anthem, Left Behind, The Shape I Am Hated, New Abortion, and Metabolic. My favorite track off the album is The Heretic Anthem. And no, Slipknot's not satanic. That's just an anti-mainstream song where they're basically saying, if you're this, we're that. That's the best way I can describe it. I'm sure there's some in-depth analysis of the lyrics you can look up, but yeah, that's what the song's always meant to me anyways. Or how I perceived it. Number 1, We Are Not Your Kind. We Are Not Your Kind is such a phenomenal album, and in my opinion, is the best Slipknot album. You have all these remarkable tracks mixed in with awesome interludes that connect the tracks, which all sound like every Slipknot album assorted into one. I love all the songs off this album, even the interludes, with Nero Forte being my favorite off the album, and my all-time favorite Slipknot track. By the way, if you ever plan on buying the CD of this album, make sure you get the Japanese version so you get All That Life included. You're welcome. And that's my Slipknot discography ranking. Let me know how you rank the albums down below, and also let me know if you like the newer direction Slipknot's been going down the last few years, because I know I certainly do. But what do you think? Let me know. Until next time, see you later.